Anyway, without Demo,
thank you.
Good news for Jahmyr Gibbs in fantasy, Matthew, who comes in as RB1 for you. It's as simple as this. 3 games David Montgomery missed last season. Gibbs averaged 23 touches and 132 scrimmage yards in those games.
Massive workload for one of the best running backs in football coming up, to your point, Connor. And then also, by the way, you love this matchup against the Bears. Over the past 5 games, Chicago gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. They're giving up 168 yards, scrimmage yards to running backs in that stretch as well. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Gibbsy, Jay Gibbs.
Oh, wow.
Pooping on.
That's a good one.
Keep on pooping?
He will keep on pooping all over his opponents.
Wow.
The number 1 running
Is that
back.
a way to, is that the new
fantasy.
Sorry,
juke
Chicago
move?
Bears fans. Maybe we might want to go to this game.
Yeah.
Commanders fans learn the hard way.
Don't you remember Triumph, the insult comic dog? Remember Triumph?
Nope.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
not.
Of course.
No one knows what that is. I've got some names for us.
Wait a minute, hold on for a second. You guys don't know who Triumph
No,
is?
I really
No idea.
don't.
I was born in 1992, Matthew.
Yeah. 91 for me.
He's still around, but he was a huge staple of the Conan O'Brien show. How is this possible?
No.
The
Is it
control
real?
room is perplexed right now.
How do you guys not know Triumph anyway?
No.
It's whatever. So Jahmyr Gibbs would be like,
Probably you.
like the Bears defense from
All
me
right.
to poop on.
I've got some names for us from the Sonic the Hedgehog universe. Cream the Rabbit, Rouge the Bat, Miles Tails Prower, Vector the Crocodile. I've never heard of any of these.
No, of course not.
Blaze the Cat.
So-
I've heard of Sonic and Knuckles. That's about
Sonic
it.
and Knuckles. So who's like a bruising type name? Because that's what Reynolds is.
Vector the Crocodile, Blaze the Cat, Fang the Sniper. Who are
He's not Fang. He's not Vector. He's definitely not Blaze.
Metal Sonic,
Metal?
Big the Cat,
Oh,
Dr.
Metal Sonic.
Dr. Eggman.
What?
Dr. Eggman.
Dr. Eggman's
there
a
you go.
key character in the show. So
Okay.
yeah, that might.
So not Craig
yeah,
Reynolds.
He's a bad guy though.
Or Jared. Okay.
Yeah.
Or Jared Goff on a bad day.
All right, one more time. Vector, maybe? Is it Vector?
Vector the crocodile is interesting.
Yeah, Vector. Vector the crocodile. Vector. He's Vector.
Okay.
As long as we're doing this dumb thing, Sonic, Knuckles, he's Vector. There you go. I've decided. Craig
See, now
Reynolds
you're
is
fully
Vector.
leaned back into it.
No, I'm not.
It's here to stay.
No, this is my way of
taking
making
off.
fun of it.
Oh wow.
There you go.
This
There you
is-
go.
this is-
That
what
is
was this?
Triumph the Insult
I've
Comic Dog.
Never seen that in my life.
Yeah, the 240p quality tells me this was in 1979.
By the way, I highly recommend looking up some YouTube videos of Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. It is well worth your 2 times.
I will.
And
YouTube.
anyone else that is not familiar with, he is hilarious. Like the characters, it's a puppet voiced by Robert Smigel. It is hilarious. All right. Anyway, let's you know what's hilarious? I'll tell you what's hilarious is the New Orleans Saints trying to stop Josh Jacobs this weekend.
That's going to be a treat.
Yeah, that is going to be hilarious. Josh Jacobs makes the. I'll keep this show on track. Don't you worry, Connor. You sit back. I got this.
That's great.
All right. Yeah.
I'm resting again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Veterans
Fine.
rest.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
3. I earned that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You and Vector. All right. Here's the thing about Josh Jacobs. Massive workload, right? Since week 8, he's had only 2 games. Only 2 games with fewer than 22 touches. Running backs that get massive workloads against the Saints produce, right? If you've seen at least 15 touches against New Orleans, you're averaging over 22 fantasy points per game. And 10 of those 11 running backs who saw that kind of workload scored at least 1 touchdown. Bad weather expected. It should be like snowy Green Bay, frozen tundra in Lambeau Field kind of weather. It's a Josh Jacobs type game. They're heavy favorites here. I don't know who's going to be starting for the Saints. It doesn't matter, honestly, whether they roll Jake Haener back out there or Spencer Rattler. Like, this is going to be a tough day at the office for the New Orleans offense. I think the Packers are up. I think they're up big. And I think Josh Jacobs has a monster day. He's my running back 3 this week.
Yeah, Packers are 14-point favorites in that game, and it is trending towards 14.5. So Monday Night Football should be a fitting encore to Falcons Raiders, Packers Saints. Great follow-up.
Yeah, when Green Bay's in control, great news for Josh Jacobs. In their last 6 wins, he's had 20-plus points in each of them. So 14.5-point spread, they should be in control. Some crazy spreads this week, by the way.
Yeah, right.
A lot of we could be inching towards a lot of double-digit spreads closing into the weekend. Our next running back on the love list is James Conner, who over the past 4 weeks, Carolina, his opponent, is allowing 160 rushing yards per game, almost 6 yards per carry to running backs, Jay. As much as it's been a nice story for their offense with Bryce playing a lot better, the Carolina defense, there's been no reinforcements on the way.
Yeah, and I think the Panthers in general are probably a little exposed last week against the Cowboys. They go into that. Those 3-point favorites, they get blown out. So you suspect that the Cardinals will have game script in this one, they are 5-point favorites, and James Conner with game script. This offense now, this rushing offense, ever since Kyler Murray came back to the second half of last season, this has been an elite rushing offense. This is the hidden benefit of Kyler Murray, which Matthew will not get any credit for.
I know.
So ride or die candidate, as he's providing NFL value, but not as much fantasy value, at least relatively to that. So James Conner, the most underrated man in football, should produce
as
again.
a man who, planted the flag for Kyler Murray, James Conner's workload has driven me crazy, to be perfectly honest. Maybe lose what little hair I had left. And you couldn't ask for a better matchup. I mean, Conner's massive workload, top 10 among running backs in touches per game since week 7. And by the way, against the Carolina Panthers, there's been only 2 times this year. Literally only 2 times this year, the Panthers have allowed fewer than 20 fantasy points to opposing quarterback. Conner coming off the massive game from last week as well. So it is frustrating for those of us that were riding Kyler Murray for so many weeks this year. But James Conner is a top 5 play for me this week.
Let's look at a couple others receiving votes. James Cook against the Patriots. By the way, the Bills have the highest implied team total this week. That's going to be important for all their fantasy-relevant players. Isaac Guerendo, he didn't practice Wednesday with a hamstring, so keep an eye on that one going up into the weekend. Dealing with the Niners backfield has been a fantasy headache all year, and it will continue to be. Alexander Mattison, because he's got Jacksonville, and Tajay Spears, who handles a decent pass game role for the Titans. That is Mason Rudolph getting the start, by the way, for the Titans in that game. He's got the Colts, Matthew.
Well, yeah, and the Colts allow the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. Pollard's been dealing with those foot and ankle injuries, maybe a little bit banged up as well. So Spears comes in at running back 34, has some flex value this week. Madison's in there. Look, again, you got to be a little desperate as well. But I'm at 27 this week. Sincere McCormick and Zamir White both on IR. Amir Abdullah has never been a guy that they usually use between the tackles. So in a game against the Jaguars in which they should be competitive here, and the expectation, by the way, also is that Aiden O'Connell will start for the Raiders. So you expect at least some level of competency for Las Vegas's offense here. Madison had 4 games this year where he was the lead running back, weeks 5 through 8, and he averaged over 13 fantasy points per game. So I think there's some potential flex value for Alexander Mattison. You mentioned Guerendo. Again, it's always a little nervous because I feel like every time you start a Niners running back, they get hurt and they go out. And you mentioned the foot injury, so we'll track that as we head towards Sunday. But since CMC was placed on IR, he's getting basically 80% of the Niners running back touches. And finally, I have James Cook as a top 10 play against a Patriots team that has given up at least 17 fantasy points to a running back in 3 straight.
Yeah, Alexander Mattison is kind of interesting, which is not a sentence that I feel super comfortable uttering aloud, but Mattison, just with this matchup and with the fact that there's just no one left in the backfield for the Raiders, like Amir Abdullah will get pass catching work, you suspect, but with Sincere McCormack gone, and with this Jags team that is very incentivized to lose, and I think that as much as the Raiders are also incentivized to lose, I don't necessarily think that's Antonio Pierce's style. Like, I think they're going to try and go all out and win the game.
It's good for his job right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, exactly. I mean, that in weird, they both sort of are, but it does feel like that Antonio Pierce has like a fire and intensity that I don't want to say Doug Peterson doesn't. But by the way, maybe Shad Khan has said to Coach Peterson, "You're good. Don't worry about next year. We believe, a bunch of bad injuries, the general manager's made some questionable moves, like, you're good." Now, I don't know if that's happened or not, but I don't know. What is the line in this game? By the way, I haven't even looked at this one.
The answer is it doesn't matter.
I know. Well, that's why I haven't looked at it.
Close to pick when I saw it.
It's Raiders minus 1.
Raiders minus 1.
So it moved a little bit since open.
Yeah, it's a blockbuster. 4:25 p.m. Eastern. Set your alarms.
This could be the Travis Hunter, well, on the Raiders side, the Shadir Sanders Bowl.
Yeah.
Right.
Like this game has massive draft implications, but I agree for the coaching side. I think Antonio Pierce is legitimately coaching for his job. Doug Peterson, I kind of think that one's been written.
The Falcons-Raiders games had massive repercussions for everything
close.
there.
Close.
They went from the number 1 pick. Well, if that Hail Mary connects at the end, I think they're in the 7 slot, and now they're in the 1 slot.
Yeah, the volatility of about 1 through 7 in this draft right now, and any win is insane.
It's crazy, which just makes your Jets' victory last week so great.
That feels awesome.
Congratulations.
Yes. Whenever you could beat the Jacksonville Jaguars and Mac Jones, you got a victory lap.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I just go back to, I just remember whatever it was, I think it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. Washington, when they weren't called the Commanders back then, but Washington, it's a lost season, it's awful. And all they have to do is lose to Miami. All they have to do is lose to Miami. And Miami, and yes, and if they lose to Miami, they get the number 1 pick and Joe Burrow. And Miami goes for a 2-point conversion. All you have to do is let them convert it. but we play the greatest defense that we've ever played all season. We shut down that 2-point conversion. We win the game against Miami, and of course, then we don't get Joe Burrow.
But to be
we
fair,
get Chase Young.
To be fair, Chase Young has been an awesome commander, and is going to be in the
lifelong
Commanders Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yes, Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Him and Sam Howell
Yeah, I mean, yes.
locked arms together
Chase,
walking into it.
Chase
It worked
Young,
out. You had Jaden Daniels.
Chase Young wasn't bad, and like
fine.
he got injured, and then like I don't know. There
I
was
don't
some,
think it
there was
worked
some coaching.
out.
It didn't work out.
Jaden Daniels is awesome 5 years later.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow
Worked
is
out in the end.
a
Just
top
the
3 quarterback in
winding
football.
All
path
due
to get
respect,
there.
as much as I love Jaden Daniels, I wouldn't have minded having Joe Burrow the last 5 years.
Sure.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
the next
that would have been
5.
preferable.
And the next 5.
Yeah, but you got to have a year of Sam Howell to whet the
One we'll
appetite.
forever remember.
Yeah, indeed.
Future Hall of Famer Sam Howell.
Sam Howell getting sacked 1,000,000 times. That's what I remember. This guy getting clobbered.
Oh, yeah. Ron Rivera inherited the number 2 draft pick, and when he left, we had the number 2 draft pick. There you go.
Full circle.
Full circle.
To be fair, Ron Rivera didn't know that his team had been eliminated from the playoffs when they got eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah. And to be fair, Ron Rivera didn't know Emmanuel Forbes was about 155 pounds as a first-round
It's hard to ascertain that information, though.
To be fair, no one can truly calculate the amount of damage Ron Rivera did during his 4 years as the head coach
Two-time
and
coach
in
of the year.
charge of player personnel in Washington. But here's the other thing: honestly, Rivera had a bad run, but truthfully, it all goes back to Snyder. Because the reason they had to hire Rivera is because the culture was so toxic and they were so under siege from everything, and it was such an awful workplace environment because he's such a terrible human being. They had to hire Ron Rivera because, regardless of what you think about his football acumen, everyone agrees Ron Rivera is like a quality human being, like an above reproach, awesome human being, and so. That was what it was. Like they hired Rivera because, no one can question us now because now we've got this,
respected football man.
Respected football
was the
man,
point.
family
It was a
man.
great story.
Yes. Great story for him. He just, should not have been
didn't
part
work.
of a football team's personnel.
All right.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.